the day you retire should be a day you choose. However, for a lot of people lately, that has not been the case, John.
Oh, yeah. Someone's got a big
Forced into
axe out there
retirement.
slashing
Yeah.
jobs.
Being forced into retirement is a reality that a lot of people are facing. And whether or not you work for the federal government, all of the headlines may have you wondering, what if this happens to you?
Sure.
I'm Heather Branch. This is John Hicks, founder of J. Hagan Capital, here to share his insight. Something that most people hopefully are going to do is retire once. At J. Hagan Capital, they are helping folks retire every single day. They have done it literally thousands of times. So again, here to share his insight on how it all goes down, whether or not, again, you chose to do it. RetirementSolutionShow.com is where to start the conversation. John, in the first 2 months of this year, more than 220,000 workers, private and public sectors, were laid off.
Yeah, and I would say that those numbers are not done yet, right? So we'll see. We'll see where we go with this. I get it, right? So regardless of what anyone thinks about, what Doge is doing and the president and all this kind of stuff, we cannot sustain. We will literally bankrupt ourselves if we run a $2 trillion deficit annually after we have $37 trillion of debt. It just can't be done. So there's going to be pain, whether people are experiencing it now or if we just let it go until literally the economy just kind of collapses, where our dollar is worth nothing because we can't afford to pay the debt service, right? So that's a big deal. So a lot of people may be out there finding themselves looking at being downsized, whatever they call it now, right? Right-sized. Maybe you did work for a government agency and you're either offered a buyout package, or they've just let you go, or you're dealing with another company. And frankly, maybe they've even said, hey, if we have a recessionary period, let's not be crazy here. I mean, we potentially all could be replaced and or eliminated, and that affects a lot of people. On this show, what we're primarily talking about is people within 5 years to retirement, or they're already retired. It's a big deal, because if you lose that position, you lose that job 1 or 2 years before you thought that you'd have the right numbers to retire, guys, that changes a lot of things. I can't tell you how many people right before 2008, how many people thought that they were going to retire and stay retired. 2007 was a pretty decent year. They were feeling really good. They go in 2008, market collapses down 40-something%. And then all of a sudden we have hiring freezes and everyone's lost the real estate, and half of Las Vegas is uninhabited. All these condos in Florida are flooding the markets because people can't afford.
Vegas housing market. That's such a memory trigger that you just said.
Because I remember, and here's the thing, we talked in a previous episode, FOMO, fear of missing out. I had a friend from college who was asking me, hey, John, I can flip this condo. If I put $350,000 in this condo in Vegas, man, I could probably get $600,000 out of it. I'm like, really? Is that true? But it did make me think, oh my gosh, you could make all this money. What happened? Well, it went bust. And then he lost most of his money. Now, here's the problem. And this is what happened to a lot of people. He didn't have $350,000 cash. He actually had a note. He actually had a loan. He lost $90,000 cash, but he was obligated to pay back that note for the difference. Ooh, guys, that's painful. It's painful. So this is why we make good financial decisions. We talk about good financial decisions on this show, not fear of missing out or I can make all this money. Once we get to that 5 years or within or already retired, we need to be making conscious choices to not triple our money tomorrow. Just hold on to what we got, right? So when we're looking at what happens, this is the big thing. So I want to talk about what happens if you're giving a buyout package. Do the math. Do the math. Do the math. As much as we may want to be emotional about that and say, this is wrong, guys, break out your abacus or get a hold of a financial advisor or get a hold of your CPA and do the math. What are they actually giving you to not go to work anymore? And it's not just the money. What are they doing for healthcare? That is a big one. If someone's going to retire before age 65, okay, there is a big cost associated with healthcare, and it's not going down. We expect that number to keep climbing year over year over year. It's just because we're lasting a little bit longer, and frankly, we have a healthcare system that's kind of broken. I'm not going to lie to you. We put a pill for everything, and there's a lot of cost involved in that. Because of that, those are other things that the administration is going to start tackling. We'll see what that does. Hopefully it won't screw up all of the healthcare systems too. But we have to look at that. You have to do the math on that and find out what is the least attractive retirement that you could deal with What do you really want to accomplish? And then what would the perfect retirement look like, right?
Okay.
It's not a one size fits every person, but you may find yourself being forced to retire a little bit earlier. That doesn't mean you can live off the exact same plans that you had if you retired 2 years later. There may have to be some cuts made. You have to tighten the belt. You just want to make sure you're doing the right things, but still can enjoy that situation until maybe you find another job or maybe find another situation. But you have to do the math on that. Being able to retire and feeling comfortable in retirement are two completely different things.
Okay.
There's a lot of people that can really downsize and go live in a refrigerator box down by the river.
Yeah.
That's not the objective. That is not the objective. The objective in a perfect world would be to live nearly an identical lifestyle to what you're living while you're working, just hopefully without the debt, without all the crazy expenses, hopefully without all the travel costs and things like that associated with working, and being able to sustain that through your life so that a surviving spouse would have still money and income left over. And hopefully in a perfect world, there may be something left over for the kids, but that's secondary, right? So we just want to make sure that that's what retirement looks like. No one wants to be forced to downsize into a place in a position where it's no longer fun, right? That
Right.
sounds that sounds terrible to me.
Right.
It sounds like one of Dante's Inferno rings of hell, to be perfectly honest.
Helping to avoid the ring of fire is
That's
not one that anybody wants to be jumping into as they're heading to their retirement years. So obviously you here to help us with these circumstances, because thinking about when you see all these layoff headlines, even if you're fine for the most part, to your point, there has been a lot of market volatility. So there are people speculating on where we are headed with the market and the economy. Some people
Sure.
saying early recession talk, those kinds of things. So if you are in your late 50s, early 60s, you are probably in the just throes of the prime of your career. Translation, you're a top dog, you are making top dollar. So that brings up one of two circumstances. One, you are betting on this top dollar salary to really beef up in these last few years, to really pad that nest egg, your 401k or whatever you're saving to for retirement. But the flip side of that is you got a big target on your back because you are a big top dog, and they're looking at that salary and they're like, we could cut that and get a 25-year-old to do it for half the price.
Absolutely.
So what we need to be thinking about if we are worried about that on any level, how do we be proactive? What do we do starting right now to prevent any surprises?
Yeah. So there's a few things. One, a couple of them, as you think about it, they're proper to think about, right? So try to recession-proof yourself, or downsize-proof yourself. People that do exceptionally good work, those are usually the last people that any boss wants to get rid of. It's the truth. That's just how it goes. You never want to get rid of your performers. So if you are in a position where you are worried, then hey, here's what I would say. They always used to say that the new broom sweeps the cleanest. Well, so do those that are a little fearful of things not working out correctly. And just be very realistic. Make sure that you have a realistic game plan for part B, right? It is the fact that we do lose a job, things like that, or forced downsizing, or they do an early buyout. Make sure your resume is cleaned up. Make sure that you understand what your skill sets are. It may be a good time in your downtime or spare time to be picking up about some skills that you know that you weren't getting at your previous job. I'm not saying going out and learning computer coding, but there are all kinds of jobs now associated with other gig type economies where you can go on Etsy. I have clients that do this, so I know. You can go out on Etsy and make tens of thousands of dollars. I got one client that makes a couple $100,000 a year making stuff on their laser engraving woodworking machine. Cost them $2,000. They make a couple $100,000 a year by laser engraving things on wood. Go figure. And they make it bourbon specific, so it's very unique, and they love it. And they make more money now than they did when they were working. So don't look at this as a situation where you lose your position or it's not going to pay the same or you get downsized. Don't look at that as the end of it all, right? A lot of people, they get flummoxed, they get their head in the wrong spot, and they say, oh, woe is me, dire. No. Remember, Charles Darwin, the whole idea of those the most willing to, it is not those, the strongest will not survive, right? The strongest won't survive. What he said was those most willing to adapt will not only survive, but they'll thrive. Use this as an opportunity to reinvent what you want it to look like. Now, if you're 3 to 5 years before retirement, a real question is, what were you basing your ideas on when you could retire? Was it when Social Security starts? Was it when you get to X amount of money because you can pull 4% a year from? Was it when, hey, you can sell that beach or sell your current house and go live in your beach condo? What did you use to evaluate that? Because you want to establish a real budget. What if you were forced to retire a little bit earlier, or you just found yourself going, oh my gosh, I just got laid off. I got my big 401k. I'll just live off of that for a while. Wow. If you haven't done the math on that, be very careful on digging into that 401k a little too soon, or converting that to an IRA and using it too soon, because every dollar you spend is not a dollar that you can use to create an income stream for you in that account. And so you really have to do the math. If you found yourself that you have lost a position, call our team. They are experts in just giving you the alternatives. It has nothing to do with working with us. It's just doing the simple math. What happens if you, could you retire now realistically? How many years until your Social Security kicks on? What are the tax rates going to be on that? What kind of healthcare costs are you going to be looking at? Instead of pulling 4% out of a certain type of investment strategy, could you go to a more secure investment strategy and maybe get a 5 or a 6 or a 7, and yes, I'll say it, potentially an 8% withdrawal rate on your money, so that you could maybe live off of twice as much as you originally thought. Now, does that mean you're going to be high on the hog? No. Does that mean you may see depletion in your account? Maybe. But could you retire in that event and at least buy some time to look at something else? Yeah. Right? So if you look at healthcare costs, you look at how you're currently positioned, you look at what those buyouts would look like, what is your tax structure, and lastly, how many more years before you would have considered retirement anyway, right? Some people, you have tons of money, you're perfectly fine, you may not be done working yet, but you are required to have an income to be retired. It's good to know those answers and good to know the alternatives, no matter what's thrown at us in this upcoming economy.
Being proactive, not succumbing to some sort of victim mentality of this thing happened or could happen to me. Instead, taking the power back. It's your money. It's your life. Of course, you should do just that. John and his team are here to help you walk right through this process, right side by side with you. So find us at retirementsolutionshow.com. If you are a federal employee, if you have been offered buyout options, if you are just wondering and worried about where the market or economy may go and have you standing and making decisions in the next 2 to 5 years, and you want to know what your options are, you want to be proactive and not become a victim, let's get to work helping you figure that out in a plan that's customized to you. Again, it's retirementsolutionshow.com, or just click on the links we've got posted in the show notes.